I'm Alan Alberto with CloneOps, and we're plugged in today. On this segment, we have Catena. We're joined by Jeremy Baksht, co-founder, CEO of Catena. Tell me, what does it mean, and who's the other co-founder?
Well, thanks for asking, Alan. Well, I'm really thrilled that I have two co-founders. I think founding alone can be a pretty hard challenge, and there's only a couple people, Elon Musk and Zuckerberg. There's a couple of people on the planet that can fulfill both sides of the house. But I knew founding this company would really require a lot more. One of our co-founders is Travis May. Travis is the chairman of our company. He also founded two gigantic businesses. One is LiveRamp, the public company that is the market ID, basically a market media measurement company. And the other is Datavant, which is the hospital, pharmacy, and insurance interoperable data company. Travis is a brilliant guy. I talked to him when I was at Walmart 2 years ago about founding this company, and he was thrilled to basically incubate the idea with me. Shaper Capital is his family office. I'm one of 6 incubated companies. So he's one of the co-founders. And then we knew we needed an awesome CTO to really kick this off and have a great tech product. It's a super technical product. So we scouted, met a lot of folks, and the other co-founder is Mike Goins, who's our CTO. So it's myself as CEO, and then chairman is Travis, and then Mike's our CTO.
And did you all meet working together during your time at Walmart, or how did that meeting happen?
Well, I think everybody would say at this point that LinkedIn is people have very strong opinions about LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is incredibly valuable. So I actually met them both on LinkedIn. Travis and I are common investors in a couple companies. I'm an angel investor. He's a much larger, more scaled investor, but we're in a couple of data companies together. I reached out to him on LinkedIn, told him about the idea. We ended up having a couple hours of lunch the following week after I reached out to him. And he agreed to make me his third entrepreneur in residence at Shaper Capital. This was September of 2023. So pretty unique experience. Found him on LinkedIn. And then Mike actually took the bait on one of my LinkedIn posts. I've got 34,000 followers. I've been an entrepreneur a couple of times, had a pretty big seat at Bloomberg and at Walmart. So I have lots of followers. I put a post out about how I'm excited to start a new supply chain data company. And Mike actually reached out to me, and which is pretty funny post facto. Mike's an introvert. Mike is not a super salesy type of CTO. So the fact that he reached out to me, I now understand is incredibly rare. So I met both of them on LinkedIn.
Thank you for sharing that story, kind of like the founder story and how Catena started. Wild to see the growth, right? And where you were 2 years ago when you first met, 2023, to where you're at now, 2025. So congratulations there.
Oh, thanks, Alan. It's funny because you asked me what my title is. Co-founder and CEO, they're two different things. So running a company as CEO, incredibly challenging no matter how big or small an organization is. But actually founding a company is even more insane than I could ever imagine. I think I would almost talk anybody out of doing it. I know the NVIDIA founder says this. It is way more than you ever expect, both from an emotional standpoint, an intellectual standpoint, and then just, did you pick the right problem? Do your customers like you? Can you actually build something useful? Can you change an industry? Co-founding is perhaps way more than I ever would have expected, but an incredible challenge and an incredible journey, no question.
I always enjoy speaking with you. It really comes from the heart for you, and I can tell you're really passionate about all the work that you're doing. So we'll digress for a moment. I'd love to hear more about, in general, who is Catena and what do you bring to market?
Catena means chain in Latin. And when I was at Walmart, I was the head of data ventures for Walmart US. And my very simple observation was supply chain, inventory, freight, and logistics is really an area that is screaming for a data transformation. And so when we named the company, Catena just felt right. There was a lot of chains already somewhere. Catena means chain in Latin. So it felt like a very kind of historical, educational journey. And then clearing is the clearinghouse of data. So when we think about what Catena offers the market, it's a universal telematics data API. And that's what we're doing now. That's certainly our wedge. We feel like ELDs, given the government mandate and requirement over the last 5 years, is really transforming the industry. So our focus is providing rich fleet data to the platforms that need it to activate better resolution around really fintech and operations. So running a fleet is really challenging. Lending, factoring, fuel cards, load boards, these are all the practices that we're working with now. We have 30 customers. We are now entering the brokerage market. So we are signing some of the top 10 brokers as well. Really anybody that needs rich data to feed a process. So that's really what we offer. We've got a really big vision for this. When I was looking at ideas, I was thinking about why isn't there a Dun and Bradstreet for truck data, for credit, for operations? That's really what this is born out of. So currently, I would consider it a convenience API layer for accessing data on fleets from ELDs and putting that back into where it needs to go on a platform. But over time, I think we'll see this become a really rich data set that also enriches and links and does a lot of other things for all these platforms in the industry. But I think the wedge is the most important part, because sometimes getting lost in a founder story and a vision is easy to do in front of VCs, but in front of a customer, what problem can you solve today? Today, we are solving fleet data visibility.
And to add to that, I want to dive in or tap into from your seat, right, with real-time telematic data, unlocking smart automation, and where we're at with AI and communication agents. Um, what do you see we could actually be doing, right, that powers the logistics industry together?
That's really why I think this partnership is a no-brainer. As you're transforming complex operational data into actionable AI workflows, we're providing that real-time telematics and workflow that you need to activate with your customers better. Having said that, one of the unique aspects as well is historical data. So it's one thing to pull a ping on a map and show you where a truck is. It's another to have all of the history to help feed a process, to understand a process. So we can go into it on a much richer basis, but if you look at what our customers are doing today, we've got people like A to B is our biggest customer. It's a modern fuel card. They need fraud prevention. They need visibility on where a truck is. Also, risk-based financing. Do you really want to loan to a fleet that has problematic trucks or safety issues? One of the realities of ELD equipment has it's typically been about compliance. It's a safety layer. Who's the driver in the truck? Where are they today? What are the hours of service? Are they compliant? But the reality is, if you have all the history on the data, you can really understand like lane density. You understand like odometer readings for maintenance. There's so much more than just a location ping. So providing you all the data to help your customers with their process, I think hand to glove, this is an excellent partnership. I mean, we're absolutely thrilled to be working with you.
And going a little deeper into that, so you're bringing telematics real-time data to life. Why has telematic data traditionally been so hard or like a pain point in the freight tech industry?
It's really just the reality of selling hardware is very different than software. I think at the end of the day, if you make all your money on landing into an OEM and having a software kit as well, like that's how these guys make their money, which is perfectly fine and sound. When I was an investment banker in industrial tech, I was at JP Morgan in Citi for most of my early career in the early 2000s. And what I saw was hardware you sell once, of course, it's got the gross margins you want. And then services, if you can perpetually have a service or a software business, you're even happier. So the reality is these folks are thinking about compliance, they're getting their OEM hardware spec'd in, and that's really their focus. With us, we think about it as combining different data formats, authenticating a mixed fleet, which often has lots of different software, updating those cadences and providing that with the history in the real time. Pretty unique experience rather than just serving hardware.
That makes sense. And maybe a twofold question, but before Katina, so what did it really take to get kind of fleet data and this real-time data into platforms? That's part one. And then from your experience, not only in the visibility space, but also in the investment side, what's the cost of having fragmented systems or even stale data across the industry for the carrier, broker, shipper?
All of the margins in this industry are pretty tight. So if you lose a truck, if you have 10 or 20% visibility gap, that's where all the problems happen. Whether it's a stolen truck, which might cost you a couple $100,000 to replace a tractor. What's the most important part to me is the trailer. If you've got a bunch of Louis Vuitton handbags, it's a $16 million trailer, and that trailer gets lost because you don't know where the tractor is. Maybe it's an inside job. Maybe it's an accident. Maybe it's stolen, outright. There's so many different challenges that come with that. So the real cost of doing business is where that 20% happens. I think about automation a lot. I mean, at the end of the day, if a truck can be automated 80% of the time, in theory, that's great. But the reality is that 20% final mile unloading, all of that layer of excellence really needs to be there, or you're going to lose a ton of money. So we look at data the same way. Most of the time, everything works, and you probably don't need a rich data feed. But the problem is the 10 to 20 to 30% of the time where you need a real time activation of what's the challenge? Do I have a maintenance issue? Do I have an engine running too hot? Do I have an hour of service issue? It's really having that real time daily alerting that this industry really needs. I actually came from the financial tech data world. I was the head of alternative data at Bloomberg, which meant finding other industry data sets for hedge funds and private equity. But the reason I mentioned that is an early alert at the right time on a challenge. That's really what is resonant on Wall Street. Lots of quantitative actors there. But here in this world that I'm becoming a lot more fluent in over the last couple of years, what I see as freight tech and logistics is very reactive. And it's a lot more about looking at a dot on a map rather than actually having early warnings and notifications. So initiatives like yours that are automating these workflows and finding the exception, that's really where you solve problems. And that's where you save, whether it's the broker, the shipper, the carrier, everybody involved in this nexus of all these partners and people. That's where you really save money. So it's really the gap that we're trying to solve for.
And then tying in that gap or that data for data-driven decisions with AI, right? It's where we tie in. So where do you think the AI needs really lean into within the telematics space? And what's in it for freight? Where's it going?
I think really for freight, at the end of the day, it's connecting buyers and sellers. So having lane density, understanding routes, who is the carrier that you're selecting for this journey, and then making sure that the head haul, back haul are all solved for. This is like the operational experience that's required. And on top of it, I don't give it short shrift with tariffs, micro and economic challenges, weather. You have all kinds of reasons why things can go haywire. So you need that margin of safety, both on how you're thinking about costing and people, but also just the uncertainty. So tying all of those things together, it kind of makes my head spin. I can't imagine like trying to run a team and a control panel without having all this rich data at the top of your fingertips.
Yeah, and then I think it's about tying data points together, right? Because you can have all this data, but if you don't know how to use it or you don't have the systems in place to be able to process it, it doesn't really go anywhere. So being able to use AI tools like CloneOps and connect those points together really drives results.
That
And
geofenced alert that you're describing, that's really what happens here. What's the truck that's available? Can you get instant updates? Is it geofenced appropriately? And then do you even have rate alignment? What are the rates? Like if you're constantly thinking about, I'm not even going to make money on this truck and it's just moving, that's the reality of, did I sign a bad contract with a shipper and am I stuck with this? How do I get out of this? How do I keep that dynamic flow for my fleet up and running? Whether it's the broker or the fleet directly, this sort of total portfolio optimization is something I've seen in finance for decades. I think is starting to happen here. I'd love to see it continue to evolve.
our team often thinks about use cases. So in partnerships or partnering with Catena and bringing that into the CloneOps environment, like what are the use cases and how do we enable our customers to be more successful? So here are a couple that came to mind. I'd love your feedback on these. One could be in the fraud prevention space, so matching fuel receipts to real GPS data. Another one is dispatching, right? So assigning smarter routes based on live location data. And then maintenance, right? So triggering service alerts for real diagnostics. I'd love to hear even like more on top of that, or even other ideas that you have or your team has.
What's interesting is since we're middleware, we're really guided by our customers. And I think that's one of the most unique aspects of what Catena is. Our biggest customer is A to B. A to B's raised 200 million or so from General Catalyst and MasterCard. They're a modern fuel card, so they focus on fraud prevention. Something as simple as a swipe. If you're trying to buy 100 gallons of diesel and you've got your fuel card's been stolen, at least the reality of being at the tractor at the pump at the same time might help you avoid fraud. So some of these very simple checkpoints are really critical and real. On the payment rail, CoastPay is another one of our big customers. And what they think about is transaction verification, fuel efficiency monitoring, IFTA reporting. There's really a lot to that sort of fuel and discount stack. From a connected vehicle standpoint, we've got customers like CarIQ where this maintenance alert, preventative diagnostics, that's critical. And a lot of OEMs have very generic, at 100,000 miles, you need to replace this. At 200,000 miles, you need your brakes repaired. That's all very sort of reactive, but it doesn't look at topography. It doesn't look like regions. Running hot in Tennessee is very different than running cool in Maine or Boston. So depending on the corridor and the lane, actually calibrating to where the truck is used, that's a really big deal. So that's where AI and the speed of using the data and utilizing that in a workflow, maintenance can be a lot more calibrated than just very generic OEM, 100,000, maintenance mile finger in the wind. So that's a lot of that. And then I know you work with a lot of TMSs, pushing and pulling into there where you have fleet oversight, performance tracking. All of that's critical too. I mean, there's so many rabbit holes that we're going down already, and seeing our customers follow that. All of it can be advanced by AI and workflow tools.
So many great insights. So as we close out, any final advice for operators trying to make their data work harder for them or within their business?
I mean, to me, it's incumbent on a team to really just not only collect the data, but actually know what to do with it. So it starts off with, do you have a data analyst on your team? Do you actually have the right software in place? Do you know are your toughest pain points? And it's also the cost per mile. Are you really getting killed by fuel costs, operational costs, running deadhead? Is it the contracts up front? Understanding and pinpointing where is your biggest loss issue on each truck mile. I think that's really at the end of the day what matters. So what are the systems, software, and people in place to really figure out how to run a profitable business? It all starts with the data, figuring out how to use the data, and getting those platforms and systems in place to do better.
All right. And as we close out, thank you so much, Jeremy. And thank you all for joining us on this segment of Plugged In, where great tech meets real operational challenges. Have a good day.